Keith Richards of Midtown, you know.
All right, let's see. We are live, and hold it. Bam. There we go.
Yo, this BoneCrusher, and you're watching the Art is King podcast. Cass.
What's going on, everybody? This is DTM. Let me see what camera I'm on. I think I am right here. Yes. So we're here. This is DTM. Another episode of the Artist King podcast, where we tap into the resources that Atlanta has to offer in terms of artistic talent and vision. And today we have Buddy Finethy. Is that how you say it?
That's how you say it, brother. You nailed it. No extra syllables or anything.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've known you for years, so I shouldn't be able to say that easily. And so that's going to be our guest for today. And once again, we're at Post Office. It's an awesome co-working space. They have this beautiful, natural, old brick.
Everything's textured in here. It's a really nice, nicely appointed space too,
Okay.
and everybody seems really chill.
Yep.
They're just super nice, man. And a coffee shop downstairs. How
That's
can you
right.
beat that? You just walk right into it.
That's right. So that's where we're at right now, beautiful downtown. I do want to let you know that I want you to check out artistking.org on this /events. artistking.org/events for upcoming events, workshops, and classes dealing with the art life. So we have a monthly meetups for artists to discuss the business of art. The next one is going to be, I said monthly, but we're skipping a couple of months, so we won't be back until July, August, September. We'll be back in September, ready for you, for all of us who are starting our fall calendar of events and art life. And then also next week, and I'm gonna post the dates real soon, where I'll be outside of here, downtown Atlanta, underground Atlanta, upstairs in the main street, gonna be painting live. So there'll be several dates for that when I'm gonna be out here. So if you're open and you're available, come on through. Bring a hat because it's gonna be hot out here.
Yep. Oh yeah.
So I'm gonna go to Target and buy me a big old.
A lot of antiperspirant.
Hat.
You know, you're working close to it.
I don't mind the sweat.
Not you, brother, but you know the masses. Everything makes it easier for everybody.
So I'll be outside painting, and if you know how to hold a brush, even if you don't, I'll show you how. And we're going to work on some of these columns out here. In the meantime, do check out all the links that will be updated on this video. And follow Art is King on iTunes. We have over 90 interviews with artists discussing their art life. And we're on YouTube also. And YouTube will have all the panel discussions that we're able to round up and put up where Art is King has been, including today's interview. So keep your eye out for upcoming stuff, getting engaged with your community, build your tribe.
Build your tribe.
Because we're here doing it and so to benefit us all. All right? So big shout out to all the sponsors, and that's what we're going to have next. Say what up. I'm back. I'm here. We're going to go ahead and get started and talk to our awesome, super talented, amazing artist guest. And I want you to go ahead and tell us your name, where you're from, and what do you do?
My name is Buddy Finethy. I am an entrepreneur more than anything else. I started off my life as a cartoonist and advertising illustrator. And have over the years moved into other realms, you know, because there is no one thing. If you're really, you know, creative mind and you're looking at so many things curiously, you're going to discover so many things you're interested in, and to narrow into a box like that, I have found my success in creating intellectual property and in creating visions of spaces and how those spaces make people feel and in a commercial environment. You know, so that is definitely the direction my career has gone. I'm probably best known. I was the art director for Mellow Mushroom Pizza Bakers for 30 years. I created their characters and created their world, and it was a great, fun world. It was very influenced by underground comics of the 70s and late 60s. That was, you know, what I was raised on. I was reading things I shouldn't have been reading way too early. You know, Vaughn Bodie, man. Once you've seen one Vaughn Bodie cartoon, you're smart.
That's right. That's one artist I did not mention when we were having our discussion earlier.
Yeah, Vaughn was, he was an amazing loose storyteller, and you see people copping. He's been dead since '73, and I still see Vaughn Bodie, you know, graffiti all over the place. I mean, he was just so loose and ahead of his time. But I was raised up in South Carolina, in Possum Kingdom, South Carolina, and it
Well,
was Nowheresville, brother.
It's called Possum Kingdom?
It's called Possum
That's not
Kingdom.
the real name.
It is not a town. It's an area, and it was at the corner of where 3 counties met. So no municipality would take responsibility for anything going on there. So it was like a nuclear containment zone. It was hands off.
Wow.
And so everything.
Badlands.
It was the Badlands, definitely. But it was perfect for us. My dad had made a run for South Carolina from the north. He kidnapped us from our mother, and he needed to hide out because there was a warrant out for his arrest.
Wow.
For kidnapping for the first decade of my life. I had no idea why we were there, or how we ended up there, or what was going on until it was all over. But it was a great place to be raised, and why I say that is we were in abject poverty, and we were out in the middle of the woods, but your imagination became your friend. Your imagination became everything. And comic books and television and playing with thought was the only way to keep yourself entertained when you got nothing else going on. So it really did feed into where my life has gone. It gave me the resources in my mind, because once you learn how to learn, once you start reading and ingesting information and acquiring skills, you never stop if you're really, really committed to what you're doing.
Right.
And it's sort of like being a preacher or a cop. You know you're going to do it, and you don't really have a choice about it. It's going to happen. So you may as well do it the best you can. So I became a voracious reader, and I became a voracious sketcher all the time. And comic books, we were talking earlier about Neil Adams and cats in that genre of comic book guys. That was like a portal to the world. Now you turn on television or you go to the movies, you see all this stuff splayed out. But the only place that stuff lived when we were kids was in comic book pages. And there was so many basic tenets of storytelling. And, the hero's journey, the Joseph Campbell hero's journey template, and all the great dramas of the world are based on 3 or 4 different premises. You learned all that. And without the the Technicolor glory of comic books, I never would have portaled into just reading. And then once you read, once you become familiar with concepts that are so far outside of your realm of experience, you can't ever go back.
That's right.
It's phenomenal. It's a curse to some people, but a blessing to me.
Yeah. Everything becomes boring, right?
It's like
you add into it.
You have your brain expanded. You can't narrow back down. So I was very lucky to be raised up there under those conditions, even though it was challenging conditions. And I came down here to go to the Art Institute of Atlanta, and as soon as I hit the street, I started cold calling to design ads. I would get the creative.
So what brought you to Atlanta?
The Art Institute did.
The Art Institute.
The Art Institute did. They recruited me out of Governor's School for the Arts in South Carolina. I got in.
So let's go. Before you move all the way forward.
Yeah.
So you're living in the country in Possum Kingdom.
In Possum Kingdom.
And there's schools there, high school.
High school, yeah, I went to high school there.
So you started drawing and creating in those days, right?
Absolutely.
You was already drawing.
Yeah, I was drawing from my earliest memories.
And so did it occur to you at what point did it occur to you that you wanted to be an artist and that was a passion?
There was never any other thought.
Oh, that's right.
That was all I was good for. I was ruined after that first Marvel comic hit my greedy little hands.
Right.
And then reading, I mean, literally you can't underestimate how powerful Stan Lee's bullpen bulletins in those old Marvel comics was, because it showed you all these wacky cats having these, careers. And they were talking about the artists and the writers and the colorists and the inkers in those bullpen bulletins, and you realize this is what these people did for a job, and that meant that people actually got paid to do artwork.
Yes.
Well, man, once that bomb hit my head,
you knew that was safe for you.
I was sunk, man. I thought I was going to be a comic book artist, and it is there's no greater school for anatomy or storytelling or action in graphic design than comic books were back then. It's just amazing.
So you had that idea that you had this in your head that you, since there are people who exist that do this, you want to be one of those.
I wanted to be one of those.
And so you researched and figured out what school you wanted to go to. That's high school. You went to college.
Out of high school, I went to the Art Institute for a year, and their brand of teaching and my brand of learning didn't really sync up. And so I went up to Reinhardt College up in Canton, Georgia. They offered me a full scholarship up there, which was good because I didn't have a dime to my name. I mean, I was still scraping to make it just living. My family had passed away pretty much. I have an older brother that is still with us, but I was essentially an orphan in the world at that point. So I lived at college, and Reinhardt, which is now a university, was a great place to get my yayas out. There was a lot of garbage floating around in my psychology, and it was fantastic. And met a lot of people, a lot of great people up there, and it just started showing me that people are the real wealth in whatever you choose to do in the world. And you never know who somebody is. You should treat people decently out of the gate.
Yes.
Because karma, in that regard, karma is a true and palpable force. Because if you start burning bridges early on, you have sunk it.
Yeah.
Careers
are built on relationships.
Absolutely. Well,
nobody does it on their own. And
nobody, not at all.
Nobody's self-made.
What I've always thought of in watching you interconnect with people, and let me tell you, nobody does it like DTM at all.
Thank you.
That he's a mover, and he moves with energy, and he moves with grace, and he's always positive and upbeat. That's what I love about going to the events you put on and seeing the interaction you have with people, is because you treat people well, and even if they're a little screwy, you're pointing people in a positive path. If I hadn't had people that showed me the power of being positive and the power of forward momentum, not as a fake way of being, but a real way of being, I would have sunk. No doubt about it. The first restaurant I ever did artwork for was up in Canton. It was the R&M Hoagie Shop, still there on Main Street in Canton, Georgia. And my friend Mike DeLuca was a restaurant guy and a pop culture guy. So we really hit it off. He was a toy collector, and you know me, I'm a passionate toy collector. But more than that, he gave me the idea that this comic book way of thinking had practical applications inside a business. And he was a business, but he was way open to creativity, and he fostered that for me. He was just an amazing person to walk in at that moment when I could have easily floundered off into some rabbit hole that didn't really go anywhere. And so I did a lot of work with them. The portfolio of work I did with R&M led me to think about the restaurant industry as an industry to be in. And back then, computers weren't around, so much. Right. It was still hand-done artwork for menus, and hand-done T-shirts, and and
the real cut and paste, scissors.
The real cut and paste, rubber cement, man. That's what I miss about a Surface Pro. You don't have the rubber cement smell; it really keep you company. A little buzz you end up at the end of the evening, and that was the Amberlith and Rubylith days. You were cutting the screen colors yourself and stuff. But it is it's amazing that the analogs of those ways of doing things still exist in all the technology we're using. And the template that I moved on from there was established, probably there, that if I know how to communicate for this person things that they can't communicate for themselves, I am adding value to their business. We did T-shirts, we did menus, we did entertaining menus, we did things that were very pop culture looking in a place not known for a lot of pop culture. And so that portfolio of stuff I did with him, when I eventually graduated from Reinhardt, I came back down to Atlanta. I literally hit the street cold calling. I would get Creative Loafing every Monday.
It used to be such a beautiful magazine.
Oh man, it was an amazing place. It was really the only place people would advertise quickly, except for the AJC, but they would get businesses that the AJC wouldn't carry. So every Monday I'd go through it and I would find the biggest ad that was designed terribly. And so I would sit there and I would just pencil out complete ads, a whole cadre of them, and spend the next couple of 3 days, just cold calling businesses all over town saying, look, you're spending this really good money for this really big space and this really great mag, and you have this really terrible ad. How about this? So that was the contrast and comparison. So I didn't know it, but I was essentially creating my own version of a pitch meeting.
Right.
But going in and talking to these people, you realize what you were doing right or wrong if you were paying attention. Their body language would tell you instantly where this was going to go, if it was going to go anywhere. And so I built up a cadre of freelance work that way. But in addition to that, I discovered the Grateful Dead, and I was
because these were the 70s?
This was the early 80s.
The early 80s,
and Jerry was on an apex, man. There was no greater place to get an infusion of funk in your life than going to the Grateful Dead parking lot that we call Shakedown Street. And so I met a lot of people in the Grateful Dead community, and one of those people was Tony Brown, who was the creator of Relics magazine. Relics still exists today. It's a jam band magazine today, covering bands like Widespread Panic, and Blackberry Smoke, people like that. But back then, it was almost exclusively a Grateful Dead magazine. So I started doing illustrations for Relics, and that coupled with my portfolio of work from the old hoagie shop led me to look for the perfect kind of hippie restaurant that I could do commercial work with. And at that time, Mellow Mushroom was 5 stores, and they had just been cleaned out by the IRS. They didn't have characters, they didn't have artwork, they had, it was just whatever people splattered on the wall is what they had. They didn't have a real sense of who they were. Well, in my time with Relics and in my time of psychedelic exploration, I really learned that subculture. I knew from Von Bodie early on. I knew from Robert Crumb early on. Read Jack Kerouac. I knew who the heroes and villains of that culture were, and truly loved it. So when I found that first Mellow Mushroom, I thought, well, this is the perfect mashup for everything I've been doing. And so as I did with those ads in Creative Loafing, I roughed out characters and logos and walked in with a lined ruled notebook full of these pieces of artwork, which to this day, the first piece I showed them is still on every cup they print. And the box art for the pizza is one of those 5 pieces that I walked in with. But more than the artwork, they didn't know who they were. And so I started talking to them about the subculture of the hippie revolution and who the players were and what the messages were. They were just too busy being hippie pizza guys to have really dug as deep into what they were. You can't build an identity for anything unless you have the multiple layers of that identity firmly in place in your mind. You have to know the depths that you can go to with it and the obscurity or obviousnness of it.
You have to be able to also translate that. To know the background, but then translate it into those pictures.
That's what an artist does.
Right.
We are communication first and foremost. If you're doing artwork and it means something to you, and you're like, "Well, you just don't get it. It means something to me," and I'm like, "Well, then you've just defeated the entire purpose of communication." It really is communication. It is about being a metaphorical representation of something else in commercial art. And so you really have to have more than just the ability to draw. You have to have information. You have to have the ability to think. And I think the ability to listen.
Yes, that's right.
People will tell you what they really, really want, even if they're going around a long way to get there. If you just breathe and don't hit them, so hard out of the gate that they want to pander what they're saying to what you're saying. Let them say what they're going to say. There's nothing wrong with a little dead space in a conversation.
You're right.
Just a minute to let somebody really get their thought together and tell you what they're doing. And those meetings don't change from a $1.98, stir fry place to a $270 million company. It's the same rules of engagement with humanity. I've sat in meetings with multi-millionaires, and it's been the same meeting I have with mom and pops all over Atlanta. And what changed was the way I communicated with them. And then once I communicated with them correctly, I could communicate them to the public. We are translators, we're prisms.
That's
the
right.
light's coming into us, the colors are coming out. And that is the most important thing that we offer the world is a greater understanding of what is representing and a clarity. And that has always been, and it goes back to the story. There's a language to art. We all have, we all stand on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah.
There's only a retreading of something that's happened before. And the original part of it is the thought and the objective. So if you're reworking clip art, into a new form, to me it's almost as legitimate as a wholly new created piece, as long as there's a new and original thought to it, and there's a viability for doing that. Otherwise, do something new. Do what you do, right? But
back to the story.
Yeah.
You walked in. You had a meeting.
I had the meeting, and they didn't have a dime to pay me, so they traded me. They traded me food for that initial batch of stuff, on the promise that when they were ready to move up, that I would be the guy to move it up.
Okay.
And it wasn't too long because I started hanging out there 2-3 days a week, and they'd always have work for me. And they, that strained financial moment passed, and it got so they could pay me a little bit. It got to be a little bit more. And after a while, they're like, "Well, why are we doing it this way? You just need to come on board and just be here every day." And so from 88, 89, through till 2 years ago, it was every day. We were there, and we created. It's got to be tens of thousands of pieces of artwork, because for every one piece that somebody saw, we were creating 10 pieces that led up to it. So there's flat files and digital files, for miles and miles over there of things that probably should never see the public eye in most cases, but it was great because I had the freedom to explore, and we got to create this backstory. And I really think that art, where you've created a backstory in your head and there's a richness to it.
Yeah.
And that is a luxury that only exists when somebody has the success to let it exist. And your job is to enable them to have the success to work you more.
Right.
So it's not just, I'm going to sell you this piece and I'm gone.
Right.
You got to know your client. You got to know them really well. And you got to understand it. And if you're not getting what somebody's really coming from, you need to figure it out quick. An artist should never stop learning. You should learn things that have only nominally anything to do with your artwork. It should be information about the world. How can you convey what a plumber does if you don't know anything about plumbing?
Right.
Even just the basics.
And that's where the research comes into play.
Yeah.
Right. So for most jobs and most gigs, the average artist is not going to have the background you have of living somewhere in the middle of nowhere, building the imagination, building the world, because that's very evident in the Mellow Mushroom brand, that there's a world involved, and it's very ecological, very natural, right? And that's where you come from.
It was organic.
So it was very organic,
Yeah.
And then the influences of the music and the times all kind of collide, and that seems to be that perfect space for you.
It was.
Perfect time and place.
Well, that's the problem with being asked, well, how do I have the career you have? And I'm like, it ain't possible. It's not possible. But you can have your career.
Right.
It's a different path. But the basic tenets are, energy, curiosity, a likability. I mean, we've discussed it before. The first rule of art, or being in the business of art, is don't be an asshole.
Right.
because that follows you like karma. I really think that karma is a true and palpable force in the universe. And it is no more evident than in how people carry over how you've treated them or the reputation you've earned. If you have a self-righteous attitude towards people about your idea rather than their idea, that never goes away. That's stinging to other people. It really is. You have to hang your ego up. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't fight to perpetuate your career but you have to know when to back down on the aggressive egomaniacism and really take somebody else's opinion as a legitimate opinion. Even though they're not a trained artist, it doesn't matter. They do have an opinion. And there is an art form that is hardly ever thought of, and that is the art of curation. And even somebody who's not somebody who can draw can be good at the art of curation. That means they can pick the visuals or ideas or influences that really inform where they're going and what they're trying to do. So even if they're not a visual artist, their idea could be legitimate through the art of curation, or what I'd call it these days, the Pinterest effect.
Because there's an app for that, right?
There's an app for everything.
Right. And so just to clarify, what has happened here is that at this moment, what you just explained is that when a lot of times we take freelancers or an artist decides to go ahead and take on a client, if they're not at the perfect intersection like you were at that moment when you started with Mellow Mushroom, then along with all those things that you said that it takes to build a career is the research. So that you know who you're talking to and bring and understand their message, and then you can research all the elements and everything that it's going to take to tell that story and interpret it with art.
Absolutely. When I'm meeting with a new client, I know as much as there is available about that client out there. And if I need to climb up the tree a little further, branching off from things they've alluded to or places they're from, you have to be a private investigator almost to know what your client is going to want. You're not doing it out of a malicious intent. You're doing it out of sheer necessity for communication and knowing who you're talking to and what you're talking about and what they're excited about and what they're into and what probably influenced them. You're cutting out a lot of that dance that people do to get to know each other. If you know, nowadays I send people YouTube videos of me. I send them podcasts, replays. They're going to know who I am, so we can cut through a lot of this stuff. You'll get a sense of who somebody is through a lot of this information. And most of the people that I deal with are CEOs or they're creatives in bigger companies when I'm taking freelance work. These days I take less and less freelance work because my goal is for me to be my biggest customer. And that's where the art of entrepreneurism started influencing my identity. I helped build Mellow Mushroom from 5, destitutely poor stores to, when I retired, 230 units across the country.
And huge warehouses full of art
from all over the world.
That's right,
we were shipping, I would send sketches to Thailand, have statues made, go back and forth with those Thai craftsmen. 6 months later, it'd be unloaded from a container. And we're not talking one piece, we're talking multiple containers, loads of artwork. Because my boss, the guy who owned Mellow Mushroom back in those days, he just traveled the world dealing with craftspeople, but he always wanted to control what was happening as much as possible unless they had something astonishing. Otherwise, we knew where our stuff was going. So over the course of time with Mellow Mushroom, my role mutated from simply somebody who was drawing pictures to helping with the marketing overview, and then from that over to art packages inside the store, which happened pretty quickly early on. And I fell in love with creating environments and manipulating how people felt, but only in a positive manner. When they walk into an environment, and it became a whole new avenue of investigation. It became a way to positively influence the world. People can get in the street and shove placards in your face and scream epithets towards the government or you can actually go out and do something that really adds to the positivity of the world. It was unexpected because I did not expect to be in the restaurant business. I expected to be in the comic book. I was just going to draw pretty pictures that I copied from Neil Adams.
Because illustrator, cartoonist, those were some of the things you said earlier.
Yeah, that's
it.
Right. And that's where I started out. But then to see the true power of art, where somebody walks into it and they're enveloped by it 360 degrees. And you're not just designing one piece for your ego to be hung up on. You're designing this environment to create a feeling inside of somebody, to invoke a tribal attitude, because what you've enveloped them in is like a huge hug. It is, man. I love on them, man. When they walk into an environment I designed, and there are dozens and dozens of stores, out there, and I see, and nobody knows who I am when I walk in. And I see people reacting to that environment. It has nothing to do with who I am. It has everything to do with how that made them feel. That came from me. But at that point, when a kid's face lights up or somebody's day got better, that's a real, true, positive force in the universe. Nice. And I've got way too much hippie in me not to want that.
Right.
I do want to, hey man, I want to make money. I'm a capitalist hippie of the first order. But I want that joy too.
Yeah.
Why do you do something if not to spread joy?
Right.
And so the power of that and how lighting influenced that led to my learning about what an architect does in a building. How the pacing around in a room affects where they look and where they go. So you can literally create an eye movement without them even knowing they've been told that, and so in any place, any space I go into, moving from left to right, you're moving into the future, just like in graphic design. So I'll start off at the left and move somebody around in a room, and then I'll place lighting in interesting points at a certain place to get them where I want them to go, which is generally the bar. No, I'm just kidding.
But that's an art installation.
Yeah.
Each restaurant became an art installation for you.
Absolutely. It became one that it was a part of a three-legged stool. In the restaurant business, you got good food, you've got good service, and you've got a good environment. Well, the one thing that's most neglected in creating most startup restaurants is the environment. And people don't know how to get there. And you have these, high-talking interior designers that come in and lay down all this lingo and jargon. I'm just a reformed redneck, man. I am going to explain it to you like I understand it. This is where we want them to go, and this is how we're going to get them there, and this is how they're going to feel afterwards. And that is good business, it's profitable, and it's a noble aspiration, because I literally will put multiple levels of meaning into an environment that will only add up over multiple pieces of artwork. So, an artist coming in as a hired gun wants to throw one piece up and they're gone. That one piece may not have this additive effect of a whole environment where a little bit's here and a little bit's here and a little bit's here. I would start with a thesis, then you would go to this not quite obvious level inside of a piece of art, and then go to the obvious, and most times people would get that very obvious, and sometimes they would get that second tier. But that thesis, or that hidden joke, or that pun, or however we did it, would take years for it to sneak up on them. But man, when somebody came 5 years after the first time they walked into a place and they've been hundreds of times, and they finally get it, they feel like they just got led into the secrets of the pharaohs too.
Right.
And it's amazing, and that means so much to them. They feel enlightened about something, and that was part of that thing that I got from my journey to here, was those epiphanal moments where all of a sudden a light turned on, and it's so much clearer and so much more obvious. And so I'm giving somebody, an epiphany in an environmental sense, but I want people to have epiphanies all the time.
Right.
They're there to be had. It is possible to see the underlying jokes. If you look at the layout of Washington, D.C., you might see an architect was having a big fat joke.
That's right.
It was just a big exercise in hiding Masonic symbols.
That's right.
You know?
So no matter what message they actually get to understand, walking into the restaurant, it's still the emotion and feeling that's going to grab them, and that's the pleasant part that brings it all together, so that they keep coming back for more food, more drinks, and make that restaurant. That's right. Yeah, it builds a community.
To go as far as I see things going, I had to get more involved in other aspects of it. I had to understand things about the restaurant business that had nothing to do with art.
Mm-hmm.
But the tenets of art influence how I learn everything and how that translates. And you start realizing that you can boil so many things down to the same thing in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so interacting with people as they came into the restaurant business taught me to temper how I came across to people.
Right.
And to ask about them first.
Mm-hmm.
Why not?
Mm-hmm.
It's not all about you. It's about how you can be of service to somebody else, and it's true in freelance art.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true in commercial art in general. People are bored, and people are tired of this world,
mm-hmm.
and they want somebody to care about them. They want an artisan approach to the world, which is a direct connection and an interaction with another human being that makes you feel like your existence actually is worthwhile. And that is true of multimillionaires, and it's true of the poorest cat.
Nice.
And so you've got to really pay attention to people. And this, you could be in fire damage recovery business. It's the same thing. People want a connection with other human beings. I'm just very lucky that art is such a direct, injection of understanding between people.
Mm-hmm.
And learning to communicate with other people. I can't overstress how important that is. If you're having a lot of pushback from other people in your career, doesn't that mean you should assess how you're coming at people?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't it mean you should be clearer about what you're doing? And if you're having a lot of problems in the process of creating for somebody, doesn't it mean you need to clarify something up front?
Mm-hmm.
Be clear. Be clear in your communication with your client. Be clear in your contracts. And if you don't have contracts, then you've got a fool for a client, and you're that client.
Mm-hmm.
People have contracts for a reason, because they protect you.
Mm-hmm.
And they clarify what the project is and the parameters, what they can be charged for and what they aren't charged for.
Mm-hmm.
You're not insulting somebody talking about money. Talk about money out of the gate, because it keeps people from wanting to kill each other. I can't tell you how many handshake deals I had that went south, and I never saw a dime out of them until I discovered, the New York Artist Graphic Arts Guide,
Right.
and the legal contracts. Back then you just Xerox them out, and it was eye-opening the levels of rights that artists own in their work. You own the intellectual property right initially. You own the physicality of the art. You own the first reproduction rights. You own multiple reproduction rights.
Licensing.
Licensing. And I can tell you, as somebody who has had 500 million views of his artwork through a commercial entity, it pays to pay attention. If you've created something for somebody and you let it go for nothing just to get the work, you shot yourself in the foot, and you shot the industry in the foot.
Right.
Giving art away for free is not feeding the ducks. It's the opposite. It's shooting every duck in the pond. It makes people not realize that this is work. Every minute you spend creating is time you could have been doing something else that you would have gotten paid for. Why not get paid for what you're creating, especially in such an essential arena as getting your identity across to the public as a commercial venture?
Right.
It is important to stand up for what it's worth, but be really realistically aware of what it's worth. Charge what it's worth, and don't be shy about talking about getting paid.
Right.
Because they're having you do artwork for their commercial endeavor because they want to get paid too.
That's right.
And I know everybody's out to do as well as they can, but if somebody wants something that's extremely complicated and takes a huge hassle to get it done, they should be expected to pay for it. And don't lower other people's expectations of other artists. by giving things away.
Right, because when you undercut yourself, you're undercutting the industry.
Yeah.
You're undercutting other artists.
Right.
And stuff. And so that's why we really push really hard for the education.
Absolutely.
You have to educate, you have to understand, and then apply that to your own practice so that we all win.
Yeah.
And we're all respected as
Well, that was when I first became aware of you. You were doing the classes. You were meeting people at Barnes and Nobles and wherever to just give them a rundown. I thought, well, this cat knows the deal. He knows what's going on. Because these kids are coming out of art school and they have all these skills and all these abilities, and they've been exposed to amazing stuff, and they've also been exposed to incredible debt, and yet they're walking out not knowing the basic tenets of business because they're selling you in art school, they're not selling you in business school. Well, in Japanese culture, they expect artists to know business. It is a business. Treat it like a business.
Right.
Because you're going to suffer if you don't educate yourself on the full parameters of what other businesses expect.
Right.
Because you're walking into a place where somebody has been to a business school or they've been through these industries and they expect things a certain way. And those things that are a certain way across multiple industries. And yet artists are so softly padded in their education that they're not even remotely aware of how business is normally done in those places. So there you have an initial disconnect with your client because you're not aware of their culture at all, regardless of how it infringes on your business. You know, you're not aware of their situation. Sitzenleben is what they call it in Germany. It's life situation. You should be aware of what these people are going through, and what the conditions are that are informing their needs of their commercial art, because they may be looking. You've got this great idea, but in the reality of their business, it has no bearing. You know, it doesn't get them where they're going. So you've just wasted your energy rendering this thing completely out, and you pitch it, and you're sold on it. Then you get there, you're disappointed because there's this disconnect, and your ego is all bruised, and you're ready to start fighting somebody. That's where that research comes into play.
Yeah.
It helps you connect that information flow. And any artist that doesn't take art as a language is fooling themselves with their own relevancy. Because at the end of the day, even fine artists, they have to stand there and explain what their thing is. And people are going to see it who aren't benefiting from that explanation. You're not going to be there to proctor and explain every time. So they have to go to great lengths to make their fine art explain itself somehow. Well, commercial art needs to have that explanation built into it.
That's right.
It's battery operated, baby, right up on it.
Yeah.
And you know, it's difficult because of the ego factor we've talked about. You get hurt, and the last thing you want to do is swallow back your pride and say to somebody, "Explain to me what I'm doing wrong. Explain to me the factors I need to know to do this job for you well." But people appreciate being asked that. They want to know that you're listening to them. You're providing the service of communication. Because how can you communicate to their public if you're not communicating with them?
That's right.
And the connectivity is everything. You know, I talked about the Grateful Dead, but I learned my basic tenets of communication in that Grateful Dead parking lot. The greatest marketing education of all time was the tribe building that the Grateful Dead allowed to happen around them. And everybody just knew all the things. They educated each other, you know, and things were easier to accomplish when they had a pure flow of hey man, this is this and this is this. Can I help you with this? Can we do this? There's just interconnectivity, and the tribe is built. And that's what we're all trying to do. All commercial entities are trying to build their tribe. Me as a commercial entity, I'm trying to build my tribe. And all you can do is be as clear as humanly possible about who you are, so the people that really will appreciate that will find you. And that's that key that commercial artists give somebody. Just because you draw pretty pictures don't mean nothing.
And we're gonna move into a segment for drawing digitally.
Absolutely.
And then I'm gonna ask you, as since your 30-year career, you're at this different level now, where you are curating artists, and you have been for a long time.
I have been, yes.
And so I want to hear, like, what is it that you look for? You just explain what artists need to have and what they should do, and education-wise too. But what is it that you look for when you have a conversation with an artist who says they want to work with you?
I can tell you right.
So we're gonna,
yeah, we'll do that later.
Yeah,
But yeah.
So we're gonna,
I have that one already.
Yes. Okay, so everybody who's watching right now, we're going to explain how Sketchable works and how you can get Sketchable the app. You go to the Microsoft Store on your Windows 10 machine, and if you have a Surface, then that's beautiful. But Windows 10 is on all types of different PCs and styles and tablets, and it's a free app called Sketchable. So you can download that, add it to your device, and then start drawing in it. There's a free version of it that allows you to just try all the different tools and draw on the canvas. However, once you click that tool the second time, the settings are locked away behind the fee to purchase the app in itself. So just try out the app, play with it. It only allows you to work with one layer on the canvas, and the tools are already preset. But I want you to try it out anyway, because if you post a drawing that you worked on Sketchable onto the stream, in a post in a comment under the stream, then I will see it and I will give you the unlock code for Sketchable. How about that? But you need to try it out first. I need to see your drawing first. I need to see that you've downloaded, tried it, and drawn something with it. If there's more than one person posting on it with their drawings, then I'm going to have to choose one person. We are here to take a moment to look through the Sketchable app on Windows 10 and the Surface Pro 4. There's a lot of good reasons on why Sketchable is the main digital drawing app that I use for my artwork, and is one of the early apps that I've tried that it felt really easy to work with and draw. So I'm going to go over some of those reasons, and I want you to take your time to watch this, but also download the app from the Microsoft Store and try it out for yourself. Try out the app. There's a free version. It's a little limited, but you can still save your work. So try out some of the things that I'm going to show you here today, and then let me know what you think about the app. Why creating digital art on Sketchable is very easy for the pro and the novice. Here we go. Number one, it's easy to set up a book. So let me go to the beginning of the app and show you. I have a book in here right now, but let's say you just started the app. You want to check out what it can do and how it does what it does. First things first is start up a sketchbook. I like to work in the A3 size. So here we go, A3, 420 by 297 and 297 by 420. So 297 by 420, that's the portrait size. I'm going to call it Art Life, because everything I do is about the art life. Here we go. And then I want not brown leather. Let's go black distress. What are these colors? Black speckled, like a black book. There we go. There it is. The name for my new sketchbook, the cover to the sketchbook, and the size. So here we go. Create. Bam. There it goes. Now when I open it, there is my sketchbook, and you can see that I have 10 pages right now. You can also see all of the pages and scroll through them by clicking that little menu on the top right. And let me take you to a book that I've already started and I have artwork in. So here we go. So check it out. So once I click through the menu up here, I will be able to then see more on my drawings. Come on, Sketchable. There we go. It's a lot of artwork, so it took a second. And so I can scroll through my pages and jump to the page that I want, or just pick up where I left off, and where I left off was with this drawing of myself. So it's very easy to set up a book. The next thing is that it's very easy and clean to understand the UI. And what you're looking at right now are the settings on how you get started with your artwork. And so on the very bottom we have the eraser, paintbrush, airbrush, pencil, marker, ink pen, nib, pastels, looks like pastels are chalk, and then the blender tool. So these are all our tools, and they're all right here. They're real easy to understand, real easy to see, and pick from one of them. Now let me switch up a page so that we can play around, and let's go with this one, since I'm going to delete or erase what's on here. So we have plenty of layers options to work with, and so I do need this. So as you can see, I have plenty of layers here that I've been working on. This for a different project that I'm in the middle of, and some notes that I took earlier. So I can start up a new layer and start my sketching process. Here we go. Let's get my pencil. And the tools are real easy to manage and adjust, not only the colors along with the palettes that is here and then a color wheel, but also with the opacity and the thickness. So there we go. And as I switch around the size of the pencil, I can also change the texture of the pencil. And this works with some of the dry media in here. And so now I can zoom in, get rid of the UI. I still keep something here, some of the controls here, which add on the layers and transform tools and so on. But I can go ahead and start drawing. It responds to pressure. It responds to, it has that palm rejection, which we look for all the time. And it was real easy to just draw. So as we keep on drawing, you'll notice that I'm just sitting here with my left hand panning and zooming. If I need to back up, I can always move back with 3 fingers on the screen to go back. I can go 3 fingers to the front. So I don't need a keyboard. I don't need anything other than the Surface Pen on one hand and the other hand here on the canvas to navigate what I'm doing. So that's another great thing about Sketchable and drawing on the surface. Here we go. Let's do the ear. Just messing around. There it is. Very cool. Very cool. This is designed to really focus on your creativity. Not a lot of menus. Photoshop is a great application. It has been around for 30 years. Exactly, not sure how many years, but it's been around for a long time. And one of the things that when I was starting out my digital drawing career was that looking at Photoshop, it's a ton of menus there, and it was not easy to just figure it out and get used to where everything is, because Photoshop is one of those apps that is used by photographers, designers, illustrators, painters, etc. Whereas here, Sketchable is just, the focus is to just create and not get caught up in all the little things that could be in the app and that are for other purposes. So that's something to keep in mind. The last thing I like about Sketchable, and let's switch the picture so you can see what I mean, is that it's really for the amateur and for the professional. Meaning you can work on your creativity and draw to your heart's content, or you can be a professional and work on a particular project and try to execute various textures, various levels of shading, values, and detail. As you can see by the self-portrait of myself holding the Art Life Gauntlet. All right, this is the Art Life Gauntlet. You got all the tools here on everything that an artist needs. So as a professional, what I like about Sketchable is that you can then quickly export the drawing with all the layers that you worked on, and export this whole page as a Photoshop file, which is a big deal, because then you can transfer this file into your favorite drawing app or editing app, and in my case, is the Photoshop. And so once I export to Photoshop, I can then reformat the size, reformat some of the details, and still maintain the layers that it took to draw this. So because it's a Windows 10 machine, you're able to use other software besides Sketchable and a regular drawing app into going to hardcore editing and working professionally for files that you're gonna need for a client. And because Windows 10 is a regular computer, it supports all this different software. It supports all the Creative Cloud software. And on this machine, I have Illustrator, Photoshop, I have Premiere, Audition, and I don't use InDesign too much, so I don't see it in here. It's not in this machine. And then, of course, your regular Windows apps like Excel, Publisher, OneNote, Word. And then a couple of extra apps that I like Medibank Paint, Sketchbook Pro. Sketchbook just went free. Manga Studio, this is an old version. Storyboarder, Paint 3D, Krita, Graphitter, Expressi. I don't know what this tracing one is. I haven't used that one in a minute. And Speedy Painter. And there is another app that I've downloaded that is Microsoft's app that I've included in here, but maybe not in this machine. So in any case, it allows you to run this computer as a real computer with real software to do the kind of work that you would do for any professional project. Now, what's going to happen here is that the only reason I jump into Photoshop once I finish my drawing is so that I can then add text, format the artwork for whatever my client needs are, including book covers, CD covers, apparel, and so on. So let me see if I remember where. Oh, I put it in here. There it is, Danos. And there we go. And then Infinity DTM version 2. I think this is the latest one. You got to name your files the right way, otherwise you won't know what's going on. And so there it goes. Bam. And not only do I have the drawing the way I finished it in Sketchable, and then I can finish editing things in, adding the text, or reformatting the size of the document, but I still have all my layers here. You see that? All the layers are still there. So this is a quick overview of Sketchable and the power that is in it. I recommend that you try it out if you have a Windows 10 machine. If you have not tried a PC in a long while, you'll be surprised to what a PC can do nowadays. It is a full functioning creative machine made for artists, made for creative people who wanna build content, whether it's video, audio, or visual artwork. All right, now back to the podcast. All right, so now we're gonna take a look at what Buddy is drawing over there, and we can see your screen, Buddy. So tell us what's going on in there.
Well, you and I were talking about steampunk as an aesthetic, and I always loved the old Jack Davis cartoons from the 60s, 70s, 80s. So I was thinking, how would Jack Davis have done a steampunk old gold miner guy? So that's what I'm doing here. Jack Davis was probably one of the greatest artists that Georgia ever produced. He only died a couple of years ago. Okay. And he was the most published cover artist of TV Guide in its history. Oh, okay. And of I think Time magazine, he did a ton of covers for. Did the Chattanooga Chew package, the old bubblegum package. And he was just an amazing illustrator and worked well into his 90s. He only, like I said, only passed away a couple of years ago, and he had only stopped doing artwork maybe 6 months before he passed. He was just amazing. He was one of the artists that was held up in front of Congress during the Kefauver Commission, which was the one that created the Comics Code Commission. Oh, really? Yeah, and he never got over that embarrassment. He wouldn't go back to comics after he was one of the early EC Comics guys. And he was a Georgia guy. I met him at the Atlanta History Center many years ago, and then he became. He had a house on St. Simon's, and we had a mellow mushroom down there, and he became a huge fan of the mellow mushroom down there. So we would communicate about that, and he loved what we were doing.
Nice.
But he, if people aren't aware of Jack Davis, they should become aware of Jack Davis.
Yes.
He was phenomenal.
Yes.
But it was people like that made me look at my personal evolution. And Jack Davis had a lot of other things going on besides his artwork. And that's why I went into the entrepreneurial end of what I'm doing, because I've made a lot of people very wealthy. And I thought, I think I would be my best client. And that is why I took all the things that I know about now and opened up Hog and Ale, which is, it's a barbecue joint, but it's not just about the barbecue, which is fantastic. It's award winning at this point. It's not just fantastic. It's about creating a tribe of people there in the realm of social entertainment. I think people in this world are hungry to interconnect. And so my basic theory was, you give them a place that serves them in a good manner, where the social interaction with the staff and the staff's encouraging of social interaction with each other is important, and that acts as entertainment, because how many places do you go in a crowd and see just hundreds of people hunched over their phone and not interconnecting with the people around them? And that's gonna lead to a social starvation, And so that is part of our grand experiment out there, and this is the prototype for franchising. So we've already developed a franchising package. I learned all this stuff over the course of 30 years with Mellow Mushroom, that business is possible to do. It's not impossible to learn things. If I can learn it, anybody can learn this stuff. That there are ways that you should pursue a prosperous life, and that is just educating yourself is the most important thing. There is something else out there that adds to multiple streams of income. Right. And that's what every artist should do to bolster their bottom line. Everybody's saving nuts for winter, man, and winter comes quick. I tell you, 30 years blew past on me, man. It blew past quick. It comes quick, man. My friend. Yeah. And so it is about protecting yourself. You're not going to be able to draw forever. You might be able to think of stuff. I look at there are commercial artists out there. Saul Bass being one of them, worked up to the very end. Jack Davis being one of them. But there comes a moment where we're all going to have to admit that we're just frail flesh, and we have to have resources to take care of us. If you're lucky, you're an artist who gets reprinted, or your stuff is in perpetual motion, and all you're doing is farming a post office box for a check. But that's not true of everybody. So you gotta create ways in your life. So I started, bought some investment properties and got into my own franchise development, and that's really just storytelling on a different level with a whole lot more lawyers.
Oh man,
it is true, man, and I love me some lawyers, but there's a few I don't like quite as much as others.
There you go.
But it really does pay for an artist to have different ways, explore different ways to add to their bottom line. If you're going to freelance, and it is an undependable business depending on how you handle yourself, then you should explore as many opportunities and avenues. And you never know where the businesses that you do freelance for will take you. You may discover something else that you love that adds to your bottom line as well. I mean, I've fallen in love with any business that I've had multiple dealings with, as far as being their social media guy or being their guiding light to their 30,000 foot image projection. There's been something fascinating about it, and you never can tell where these relationships are going to take you. So it's another reason to be really nice to everybody, because you might end up liking them.
Right. So talking about being nice, right now you're drawing, you're using Sketchable. What do you think about it so far?
I think it's great. I mean, I generally use other pads and other programs. This is a really simple. Some people like a tooth to their glass. I don't. I like this.
Oh, really?
Is smooth.
Because they gave you the hard tip.
Is this the hard? I mean, this feels great to me. I mean, it's just whatever you did it right. Yeah. And it's very intuitive. The program itself is intuitive. It's moving really, really quickly to pick up where I'm at. I mean, like, there's no drag to me.
Good.
I mean, do you notice any? I don't think.
Well, there is a drag if you want it to have a drag.
Right.
Because a Surface pen has different style tips that you can interchange.
Oh,
So then
that's
you can have-
different from the Apple Pencil.
Right, where the Apple Pencil, all you have is that one style and that one grip.
Yeah.
So there's different tips for the Surface pen, but I have several Surfaces, and that one just straight glass. And whereas a couple other ones, I have a screen protector, so that gives me a little extra drag.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't want to use the extra muscle to not overdraw the line.
Right.
So
Right.
that grip is going to give you that grittiness to kind of glide and just enough to get the lines you're looking for.
And what I like is the feathered lines. I mean, this thing really, that's a great sensitivity to
Yes,
it. Right
yes.
there.
The Surface is that's the 4th generation, the iPad. Of the Surface Pro.
Right.
And then that's 2 years old already. But at the first one and the second one, they're kind of rough because they were learning and figuring things out working with Wacom. And then by the time the 3rd one was released, Microsoft was doing it all by themselves.
Right.
And then and that's the 4th one. So then they cleaned up whatever they were working on, and now it's just really insane. It's just insane kind of power, insane sensitivity and touch and feeling. And Sketchable was made for the Surface line of computers.
It is really cleanly responsive for sure. It's also, that you're getting in there, man. I mean,
Yeah.
look, that's
right.
incredible.
Right.
That's superior to other pads that I'm
Yes.
using. That's
yes. You can zoom in
yeah.
and get good detail.
What I love about the pads in general, just pads, is that while you're dealing with a client, you can just knock things out in front of them. And there you can't underestimate that kind of power of performance art.
Right.
You know, people get fascinated and nothing conveys we're creating, like somebody who can draw right in front. You've done it a million times. I know I've seen you out and about, and you're just like whipping stuff
That's
out
right.
at meetings and things like that.
Yep.
It's a very powerful way to really engage your client better.
Yep.
You know.
You have the beginnings of that job already laid out.
Yep.
So let's talk about last couple questions. One is when artists reach out to you and they want to work with you, collaborate with you, work with you, or they want to somehow get a gig going. What is it that you look for in an artist?
The ability to learn. I can teach anybody anything. It's how quick they pick it up and the attitude they pick it up with. You know, I've taken people that had no formal art training, but they had this real connectivity to the process, and they obviously paid attention. And a lot of what I would do with them, you know, I can teach them things. But when it's collaborative, when it's more collaborative, you're looking for somebody that you really can communicate ideas across back and forth. And you know, sometimes being an artist just means being a great conductor. You know, you're conducting the idea to completion, whether you're doing it in somebody else's your hands, and you want to know that the trumpet player is going to play the trumpet.
Right.
You know, and then you can orchestrate from there. When at the end of my run over at Mello, I had a 100,000 square foot facility of artists that were working. We were working 6, sometimes 8 teams of artists working on interiors for stores because there were so many stores being built at a time. And there was maybe 2 years there I actually didn't produce any art myself. I would just do rough sketches, hand them off, and then coordinate between teams what pieces of something they did. And if they were right, and usually they didn't get assigned anything until they were right, then they literally executed it either the way I would have done it or better. And that's the beauty of collaboration, is sometimes somebody's going to put rocket fuel in that thing that you didn't have and find something completely new and better. You know, and then you'll take credit for it. So
For sure. Right.
I always like to give people
You're the
credit.
boss.
Like, I mean, out at Hog and Ale, we just did this art package in there when we opened up. And two of my favorite people from Mellow Mushroom, Johnny and Jennifer, came over with me, and they weren't artists. They had an interest in art, and they had an art in their background way far away. But they had complete faith in my word. And they listened to how I explained to do something. And I gave them all the tools, and then all they had to do was just do it. And they just did it. And they did this amazing job, and they discovered something about themselves they had forgotten. They had forgotten how much they enjoyed making and creating. Because as artists, we're firing those particular neurons all the time. We don't realize other people aren't firing those neurons. So there's a basic disconnect right there between us and the straights.
Right.
But when you can reconnect somebody with that, it's an amazing thing to see that light, really come back into their lives. And if people haven't done collaborative work, I do recommend that they do it. You know, there's so many, just a change of perspective, so many advantages to getting a change of perspective on a project that has had so many beneficial moments for me. And I think it's true of everybody. You can get unthought of benefits from working with people. Always make sure everything's covered legally.
Right. That's where the lawyers come into play.
That's where those lawyers come in. And do know a lawyer. I mean, it is not a dirty word to have an intellectual property lawyer in your Rolodex.
And because you want to be a successful artist, and,
Absolutely.
so you have to cover all your bases as much as possible.
Well, I always hated that romantic storyline of the artist dying in squalor. I'm going to die in luxury. Thank you very much.
That's right. And enjoy the fruits of your art.
Absolutely, and everybody should. And
That's right.
that education is going to give you the ability to.
That's right.
So do it.
Okay, so last two questions. Number one, where do we find you online right now?
Best place is probably Buddy Finethy on Facebook. We have hogandale.com, so you can write me at buddy@hogandale.com. But my email address, anybody's welcome to drop me a line, joebud01@gmail.com. There is Arcadus Design Group, ARCADUS, on Facebook, and that has a lot of my commercial work.
Okay.
And if people are interested in more of the restaurant design into things, or some of the rock poster stuff I worked with Stevie Ray Vaughan, the Allman Brothers, and have done tons of stuff like Red Hot Chili Peppers comic book that got inducted into the Hard Rock Cafe permanent collection.
Nice.
So there's little bits of all that stuff spread out there, but I think a lot of it's linked on my personal Facebook page. So feel free to friend me on there, and we can always chat.
Okay.
But a lot of times it's just about knowing people.
That's right.
And if I can't use somebody, I may know somebody that does need them. I can't do everything. And why not spread the wealth? If somebody's out there who can do the job, and they're really good, and nice.
Right, nice, right. So, and the second and actually the last question is, if you could go back 30 years ago, walking into Mellow Mushroom right before you walked in, as you were getting yourself together, what one or two pieces of advice would you give yourself?
Lawyer up. Not against them, but against the world. At me at that point in time, because I got taken by the best. I gave away things that should never. I've lost more intellectual properties than most people ever get an opportunity to create. Although I've benefited from a lot of them too. But don't let ego get in the way. It took a complete paradigm shift for me to rest my ego. Rest your ego, communicate, and be aware of your rights, and live a positive life, because we've got a gift, and if you can't spread positivity with that gift, what are you doing? You're wasting your time. Make somebody happy.
Yeah.
And make a little money at it.
That's right.
And it is absolutely possible to do. And I'll fight anybody in the street over that. That's not being positive. Wait a minute.
You gotta set them straight.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on today, pal. It's always good hanging out with you.
Yes,
if you guys haven't had a chance to meet Big Dan over here, you need to get out here and help him out with some of these projects. And he's not going to bum steer you, man. He ain't doing this just for his health. So come out and give the man a little support. I always love keeping up with it.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, my friend.
All right, everybody. See you next week. We have another great artist. We'll be here at this space here. Find Artist King on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, everywhere you want to find some cool art business content. And follow me anywhere on the internet under Delta Tango Mike. That's my name on my website. That's also all my social media handles, Delta Tango Mike. Talk to y'all later. I'm about to crank up the end of today's session with Sketchable, and see y'all next time.
Peace. All right, man.